Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a Havencraft deck, basically a standard Summit Haven deck, but I thought why not cover it. I haven't covered Summit Haven for a little while, at least not a decent build, and I actually really enjoyed this one. So we are running a Priestess, which is actually not too bad. Getting the extra chance at Summit Temples does help out here and there. Of course, this is extremely legendary, packed with 3 Knights, 3 Hind, 3 Salvation, basically all those sort of things that you could need. Surprisingly, this variation doesn't run any Snow Whites. Of course, if it was me, I would probably slot in Snow Whites in case of something like Red Hot Boots, but it's up to what people decide. I mean, this deck really piqued my interest, mainly because I really liked the idea of Godscale Banquet, and I really wanted to at least include those because they are a lot of fun to play with, and it had some different cards to some of the more traditional Summit Havens that focus purely on just developing that damage in that way, whereas this one was much more early game Amulet focused and then moving into late game followers. So it's still a Summit Haven, just different variant to what some people are used to, but it does look interesting, so we'll get right into it and take a look. Our first match, the Haven Mirror, why not?
Moonlight drives me mad.
Haven mirrors are pretty common with this deck, and it's interesting to see how they go. I can't remember what the second match was, but it's possible that could also be a Haven mirror of some form. But we'll have to wait and see. So we start off with a pretty solid hand. Going for those early drops with Globe and Moria is actually pretty good. Being able to use those in conjunction with other cards works really nicely, especially when you do top deck another Globe. If we can draw a Summit Temple, we can actually favour those for turn 2 over playing the Moria. Heavenly Knight, of course, will come in handy too, and there it is. Top deck Summit Temple, straight down onto that. And of course, Windows' little alert sounds always going off when you don't want them to. So not a bad setup overall. We get our 2 Globes out early, which means our draw power is pretty good. We have got Summit out pretty early, which means we've got that setup already there. And now we're just drawing more cards for our early game, which tends to be what a lot of these amulets do. They either destroy or draw, or are just straight out value, coming in with hot ass followers to really take your opponent down.
Crystals of snow.
Of course, they're going for the more traditional Snow White Priestess kind of combination deck, where they really focus more on early game followers with a few amulets teched in over the top, instead of just going with a pure amulet early game like this deck is. So I go wide with my amulets, knowing we're going to have double proc next turn. Not really a big issue. Plus, going into turn 5, we can actually do pretty well, especially since Snow White has been played. It means that our pure annihilation is going to get at least some form of value next turn. Being able to banish 2 Snow Whites, removing all of their extra value. Now, it's 3 in 1. Unfortunately, we hit the Snow White. Not so lucky. I would have preferred to have hit the 1-2 on the other side there. The Priestess would have gave us just a full board clear. Unfortunately, we missed it just a bit. Still good value to remove those, though. Especially since there's not many other targets for me to hit that. Unless they go for multiple Carapace, like I have. So, White Diamond. Just draw power flat out there. Most of the decks that I do these videos on as well, guys, mostly come from Twitter. So if you're ever interested in just looking for a good place for decks, just scroll through Twitter. If you've got a little bit of know-how in the game, you can discern which decks have some potential and which are just absolute garbage, just by even glancing at them. Of course, if they look interesting and you've got the cards, I do recommend always testing decks out. It's always worth giving a deck at least a chance at having a go. Sometimes it'll take a bit to get used to, but most of the time it's worth it. So, Priest of the Cudgel, not too surprising there. They can do absolutely mad plays with that card, so why not? And luckily for us, our Beacon of Salvation is going to be a perfect clear next turn. Plus, we can even slam 7 to the face, thanks to Summit Temple. So we put them right within lethal range, if this 5-7 stays on board. Judge of Retribution, unfortunately, is going to get rid of both of these. A little disappointed by that.
The white one is adorable. It's making me wild.
Penitent sinners!
So they're going to be able to clear this pretty easily. But we're still going to do that push. I mean, if we can get it in, we may as well do it. 7 damage straight to the face. Oh, and unfortunately, Heavenly Knight does kind of ruin any plans. We've got...
What an eyesore.
Especially with this trade here, with the Heavenly Knight to Heavenly Knights. Our only chance of winning now is top decking Heavenly Knight, so... That's about it for us. Otherwise, it's going to be an absolute nightmare to win this matchup. Lucky, my luck was on point for that draw, and Heavenly Knight it was. So Banish plus Heavenly Knight is lethal. And as he said, justice is delivered.
Fine, fine. I admit I lost.
And our next match here is actually against Rune. So at least it gives us a little variation. I was a little worried that we had double Haven matchups on my win list, but fortunately we didn't. You guys will get to look forward to Rune next video. We'll be looking at a Dirt Rune deck. So hopefully you guys will be keen for that. And if you haven't checked out previous videos, we've got playlists for both Unlimited and Rotation for Dawnbreak Nightedge, which, since we haven't had any major nerfs and only a couple of buffs up to this point when this video is released, there really isn't too much variation in the decks and how they do. It's mainly just matchups now, so you can go back and check pretty much any video I've done in the last month and a half and see, you know, where decks stand, and gives you a nice list to work with. So Gemstone Carapace really coming down there. Getting it out on 2 on an empty board. Still reasonably decent even without a follow-up play. My opponent really pushing spells. Makes me a little nervous. I don't really like it when spells are being pushed super hard, but we can go really wide with these now since we are going to have a proc next turn on both of these anyway, freeing up a couple of spaces total.
I see to the end.
And there is Rune, Destiny Bard. That doesn't really surprise me. Getting that out on 4 is basically the optimal play when you're playing this sort of Rune deck. Of course, it does work out for me because Red Hot Boots is a instant clear on it.
How could there be
And
a
there's no
feature
reason
like
for me
this?
to do too much else. Playing the Amulet's about all I really need, and we can basically get a couple of turns. If they do clear this gemstone, then we go into the Hind, which is perfect, so
Boom to you.
I wasn't too concerned. Of course, Windblast. And now a Hind, which will give us full activation on all of this. Unfortunately, we won't get to use our Moriani, or Moria. I really don't know how to pronounce that, and I don't even really want to try, but yeah, we don't get our random destruction, but we do get a lot of value out of all these cards total. 3 Banes, something that Rune just has to get rid of before they can really play anything else. Double Mysterian Missile does do a sweet job at clearing out my White Serpents, which is a little disappointing. But, I mean, getting Arc Priestess out now, fairly good, especially after seeing those. With the Evo on the Hind, we can at least deal 5 damage, which puts them within a reasonable range for when we can go for our Heavenly Knight. I mean, if this 4/6 sticks around, we can get damage off it. If it doesn't stick around, we get Summit Temple off it. So, a couple of turns works out really nicely.
You ready for the good stuff?
Of course, Owl, straight into Chimera. Good way to get rid of my Hind. Can't fault them for that at all. But they are really trying to push this now with that. My White Serpents, just, you know, well, White Snake, I want to call them Serpents. They look a lot more serpent-like than snake-like. I suppose same sort of thing overall, but we do get to at least remove one of these 7/7s, which is good. I could have removed both if I had paid attention and used Pure Annihilation, so small misplay, but overall giving me similar results. So it just means we are able to take a lot more damage off this 7/7. Now, of course, with D-Shift not being in rotation, it's not something I'm really worried about.
Darkness on this plane.
And looks like next turn we are going to at least be able to clear everything out here. Of quite an easy trade with the body, and then the Pure Annihilation does get rid of the 7/7 at last, and Moon and Sun is now gone. Plus a nice Summit Temple setup for our Heavenly Knight, which will play quite well into our next turn. Of course, Conjure Golem though, kind of ruining my day, just not playing along at all. But at the same time, it does allow me to at least set up a Heavenly Aegis, which is perfect, especially when I throw the Evolve on it. It's going to be very hard for them to come up back off this Heavenly Aegis. They need to pretty much end the game at this point. That will set up wards that are pretty much unclearable, but I don't see that happening in any major way. So there is the Unbodied Witch. Since they do have an evolve point, we can suspect they're going to spell boost whatever they just duplicated. Worst case, there's really nothing. I mean, what could they have just spell boost that would be dangerous to me? These Chimeras, no real threat, not when you have an Aegis on board. They're going to soak up all that damage. No D-shift means they can't shift me and just hit me in the face. That really only left probably... no, really nothing. Even if they had a spell boost to Doom and played it off that somehow, if they had one, that wouldn't have been able to kill me this turn. So we pretty much had a guaranteed lethal at that point outside of them playing a ward. Even with a ward, it would have been a little more difficult. So not too bad at all, clearing out Rune. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Haven is still one of my favorite classes and I do enjoy playing it. Unfortunately, I don't play it as much as I used to. I am more partial to playing Portal or Blood or even Sword in this current meta, just to get my games just sometimes a little bit quicker and sometimes just for fun. Most of the time I am making these videos for you guys and don't get to play every single thing I want to consistently, which is why my master points are usually pretty wonky, because I obviously play a lot of decks that don't work and a lot of decks that do, and they don't really balance out very well. So if you did enjoy the video, do hit that like button, subscribe. You will find the deck list in the description below, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.